Hi. So this is the last one. We're almost done, at least before lunch. So who are we? EFF is a nonprofit that fights for your civil liberties. We're a collection of activists, lawyers, and technologists, and we look at the world we live in the digital world, not just from the eye of a technologist or from the eye of policy, but we look at both, how they intersect, how they affect people. And this means that we work in a wide variety of subjects, from AI, co-editor's rights, voter election, encryption, freedom of speech, privacy, which is the main talk. But we also develop software. We've developed Serbot. Many of you, I'm guessing, have used it. HTTPs Everywhere, Privacy Badger, Panopticlick. So we try to have a collection of tools to fight for your liberties, whether that's with policy or with tools, coding tools. So we fight for the users. So why does this talk matter? The browsers are most people's window into the internet. That's what they use to access information. That's what they use to chat with other people or just share something. So which window you use is important. And the most prevalent windows are the ones that set the tone for this conversation. Now, we also know that users do not usually change the defaults. So defaults are important. So not only are the windows important, but the defaults that these windows offer are really, really important to know which rights users actually can enjoy. So the internet should be an opt-in and should empower users where the defaults are respecting their rights. So a lot of times when I talk about privacy, and especially in this space of browsing the internet, a lot of people say, who cares about more relevant ads anyway? It's just like if I like shoes red or blue. Or so what if they gather some information? It's not a big deal. Well, as we've learned through the news these past 2 years, I think, mostly, it's not just some information. Advertisers take a lot more than that. And here's a big list of them. It goes age, gender, race, address, whether it's physical or email, your location, which goes into a very, very, very narrow location. It's not just in general whether country or city you live in. Your browser, which device, time you spent on the site, how you've moved your mouse around the site, if you hovered about a specific thing, for how long did you click or not click, your health data, were you writing a message but you decided not to send it so you deleted, that gets logged too. So it's a lot more information that the general public is aware of. And they can infer a lot of things, either directly or indirectly from that information. You can compile several different databases. You can join different types of data and figure out a lot of things. Your politics, your health condition, religious belief, sexual orientation, hobbies and interests, your personality, where are you going? And where are you going, not just because you search, but because I can figure out probably where you're going to go next because I've been spying on where you go all the time. And who you know or who you've met. So what can they do with it? Marketing is what everyone talks about for more relevant ads that you probably ignore anyway. There's a lot of studies about that, but that's a different talk. Decide what you see from your friends. They get to decide what news you and from which ad lets you see them. And they get to decide what you should interact with, what generates more engagement for them. So we start saying that it's who decides what for the users. And it should be the users that decide what they want. And this can trigger psychological buttons. And this is not some paranoid talk about what could happen if. This is real stuff. Experiments that have been run, that every time we hear about it, it's a, oops, we didn't intend that, it won't happen again. And a few months later, or a year later, we have another oops, and a year later, oops, and we continue having oops, and it's about time that we stop having oopses, because it's getting really creepy. And yeah, they can control your anger, your happiness, your depression, your fear. this goes beyond to just serving some relevant ads. So what are the browsers actually doing? In the last couple of years, we've seen a change in the conversation that the public and policymakers are having. Finally, privacy is actually something important, something that we care about. We always care about, but we didn't really know how much we cared about it until now, until we saw how they could use it to manipulate elections or how we feel. And the browsers are catching up to this. They're starting to do things to protect their users, to protect their rights. So let's look at a couple of them, which are the main windows of the internet. Apple, with Safari, they've rolled out ITP, which is protections for the user based on how you interact with the site, if there's meaningful interaction with the site. And this is a way to protect them from third-party trackers and sites that they're actually should not be sharing information with. They've also had battles with Criteo, for example. And for a lot of you, you've never heard this name, but Criteo is a very large company that likes to gather data, and their money comes from tracking users and selling this data. And when they saw ITP taking a lot of their customers, which are very valuable for advertisers, they decided that the best way to react to this was to use a security feature in the browser to continue tracking users, HSTS, so they could have a super cookie in HSTS. And Apple responded to this, but it's a continuous battle. They've been working a lot on having large anonymity sets for their users, so every user looks the same. Unfortunately, they don't like giving users the choice, and there are no extensions. And we'll talk about why that's important. Brave has been incorporating a lot of things. Has HTTPS Everywhere built in, has a lot of anti-fingerprinting techniques built in, it's blocking trackers by the easy list, has Chromium extensions. So they've been adding and adding features to protect their users on the privacy side and the security side because it's been a priority for them. Same for Firefox. Firefox has made a lot of changes lately to make sure that the users' privacy has been respected. They have had the disconnect tracker blocking list for a while. They have the widgets and containers. They allow you to install third-party extensions because they understand they cannot account for all of the cases because the internet is very diverse. So you can install things that cover maybe your particular threat model. Tor is always talked about in terms of security and privacy. It's kind of an edge case because it has features that are great for security and privacy, but maybe for the largest amount of users, for most users, it may be hard to use. But you get HTTPS Everywhere, you have a large anonymity pool, and of course you have a lot of anti-fingerprinting protections with that anonymity pool. Then we have Chrome, which is removing fingerprinting vectors, like a lot of data that comes in the user agent, but no tracker blocking, no protection for trackers, killing meaningful privacy extensions because, if you're not already doing the job yourself of protecting users, let's also remove the possibility of them to have meaningful privacy extensions. And let's not only do that, but let's propose standards to even track better users in ways that they cannot remove. What is Edgeium doing? So now that it's based on Chromium, they actually added what Chrome should have added, which is tracking protections. In past versions, they always supported DNT and did a lot of work on these sort of things. And the question is, will it support extensions in the future? They do now, but we don't know if they will commit to that. So, when we rank them, or when I'm ranking them here, stacking them up, it's about their current actions and their actual plans. These are not grades. Like if they got a tick, it's not they got an A+ and they're good to go. It just means that they have done something about it. So don't take the greens as they're perfect, because no one is. So fingerprinting. Fingerprinting is when I take characteristics of your browser and that seem simple if you look at them individually. Like what size of screen do you have? Like what fonts do you have installed? But when you compile them all, you can figure out pretty much which person is which. You can identify them and separate them individually. We have a project that has been doing this for years that shows you how fingerprintable you are, called Panopticlick. And all of the browsers do something about it. Firefox blocks known third parties doing fingerprinting. Chrome is committing to reduce the user agent. Safari does stuff about canvas fingerprinting, for example. Tor does a lot, proccing scripts, making sure that all their browsers look the same. Brave, they forbid access to commonly used techniques. And Edge, same as Chromium, since they adopted it. What can you do about fingerprinting? There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. The user agent is one of those. And we're glad to see that a lot of browsers are committed now to remove a lot of that data that had no point of being there to begin with. And many times the point of fingerprinting is to create a large anonymity pool. And that means that when you're browsing, your browser looks just exactly as anyone else's browser. So you cannot be identified just by that. Now, that in reality is really hard. So this doesn't mean that fingerprinting is not a problem that should be addressed, but it just means that if you're looking for a large anonymity pool, you're going to hit with some realities. And some of those realities are whether you control all of the hardware where your browser is implemented or not. If you do, you're going to have an easier time to build that anonymity pool. The other one is how far are your users going to go into breaking their web experience or not doing certain things so their browser will look the same. And Tor is a good example of that. So it's kind of an unfair comparison when you talk about large anonymity pools, but that doesn't mean that there cannot be efforts to reduce the fingerprint or make your pool a little bit larger. So just consider all of these aspects when we're talking about anonymity pools. You can offer different other types of protections like ESNI, DOH, DOT, tunneling. Now these are more options that are coming into the browsers, except for Safari, but all of the browsers are implementing different ones, and they're giving options to their users. Why? Because third parties and sites are not the only threat vector for privacy. So you need to consider all of those. It's not just the website you're visiting, it's the medium where you're transmitting your data to. And you have to allow users to choose. So if you have those options and you can allow users to choose between them, having good defaults it's important, but having other than the good defaults for different threat vectors is also very important. And now more to the most important part of where I want to get is the tracker blocking capabilities. Almost all of them are doing something meaningful about it. And they all have different approaches to it. Some of them are using lists, some of them are using heuristics, and some of them are looking at behavior, or a mix of them. And honestly, I don't think lists are better than heuristics or than behavior. I think we should be using a combined approach because you can catch different things with different methods. You have to balance that protection also with not breaking the web. We know this because when we built Privacy Badger, if we go too aggressive, we'll break the web for everyone. So how do you achieve that? You search for a good balance, or you're giving the most privacy you can to users without breaking their experience. A good example of that is yellow lists, where you know there's a certain source that might be doing tracking or is doing tracking, but it's essential for the web not to break. So what you can do is try to allow the resource to load, but do your best to protect the user, like removing the capability to install, to set cookies or access storage or try to fingerprint. You need to also be transparent with what you're doing. Some users just want to browse the web with the best protection ever, and that's the end of it. Like, they don't want to click anything else. But it's also good to tell them what's going on the sites they're visiting. Some sites take their privacy is in the core of their mission to protect their users as well, some others not. So providing that transparency on what you're doing too is important to users. Allowing them to control that experience is important too. You shouldn't just decide what users do, you should allow them to control what is best for them. And to give them choice, and control and choice is different. You might give them control on whether they like dark red or light red, but you're not giving them much choice on color. And extensions that provide real privacy are really important. Some of them provide you with that, Firefox, Tor, Brave, Edge for the time being. But Chrome with Manifest v3 is going to really make it hard for extensions to provide really meaningful privacy. And Safari doesn't even allow you to do this anyway. So that is the reality. Why is this important? The internet is very diverse. You cannot account for every threat out there. You cannot expect that even with all the money, you're going to protect everyone from absolutely every threat. What you can do is do your best and provide ways for users to have other tools. There's other organizations, there's other users that are fighting different threat vectors, and if you allow them to have those tools, they can protect themselves also from the ones that you haven't thought about. If you remove those choices, then users are at the mercy of what your team can think of. So you can start seeing a trend that most browsers are taking privacy seriously. Privacy as core of their mission to their users. They are serving the users. They're not serving advertisers. They're not serving someone else's way of making money. They're serving the users. And then you can figure out the rest on how to make money on things if you want to bring that part of the conversation. But you cannot say that privacy is not as important as an industry. Privacy is hard, yes, but there are easy lifts. If you ignore those, you're missing the point. If privacy is too hard for you to try, maybe don't get involved in making a browser. Ads doesn't mean that they're always tracking. There's ads that respect user privacy. It's really easy in these conversations to hear that, oh, but we need for free content, we need ads. Maybe, but that doesn't mean you have to have tracking on them or that you have to remove the choice for users to have their privacy respected. Money doesn't make it okay to violate our rights. Some challenges are providing privacy while having good browsing experience. That is a hard challenge, but almost every browser out there is trying to do their best. They're actually putting privacy protections while figuring out what's the best level to not break the web. We've seen that more trackers blog. You even have faster and less noisy browsing. Too aggressive might break the functionality. You have to let users choose. Privacy versus security. Some companies have invested a lot in security. And that is great for the entire ecosystem. But when we talk about security and privacy, sometimes we see them as different things. And security is a priority for everyone, and sometimes for some browsers, privacy is not. But privacy can be security as well for some users. There's certain information that can put me at risk in certain regions of the world or within the community I live in, and exposing that part of my life would put me at risk. Security is intertwined with privacy. They're not a separate thing. You have to see them as companions. Because if you're not seeing that part, you're missing on a large portion of your users, and you're putting a big size of the ecosystem at risk. So users shouldn't be forced to choose. This is not about which browser you should choose or which one you shouldn't. You shouldn't be forced to choose between browsers because which one offers more security and more privacy. You should be choosing for other things. All of them should be offering you security and privacy. So what can you do? The internet needs to be an opt-in world, not an opt-out. You need to think about that when you design systems, especially when you design browsers. You need to think about the defaults, and the default security and privacy should be the most important thing. If you're not providing those defaults, you're not serving your users. You're not doing a good job. You need to, as a user, also you need to demand better. You shouldn't have to choose between privacy and security. And your voice does have power. You just need to be heard. Don't think because you're just a single person among millions or billions that you do not have power. If we all push for a better experience and to be better serviced by the browsers, if we do it all together, we will get a better service. You're not alone, and we should all get our privacy back. Thank you.